Hello and welcome to this new series. So we're going to start off in Lightroom. These are the images that I kind of selected that I had visions for. I did shoot with the intention of creating composites. So whenever you do something like this, definitely make sure that you're shooting the image to be edited the way that you want it to be edited. So here in Lightroom, I'm just doing some very minimal editing, lighting, changing the temperature, which you saw me do there in the basic panel. Did some healing tool, healing tool. Yeah, I can speak. Healing tool, and just removed a little thing she had on her forehead. And Lightroom, if you've updated it for at least for Creative Cloud here, it has adaptive portrait settings now, which is insane. So it'll like select I'm gonna butcher this, sclera, or the whites of the eyes, or the iris, pupils, eyebrows. And what I did was I just wanted it to be like a little bit more defined and a little bit more angelic-y, and you'll see why in a minute. But so my main thing with this image particularly was that I wanted her to look as glossy as possible. So I turned up the texture on a lot of things. I went in and I try to make her eyes as light as possible without making it look too fake. I know they look a little like hazy there, but it'll go with the vibe. So that's our before and our after, and then we're gonna send that over to Photoshop. So I'm saving that to my desktop, and then we're going into Photoshop. Now, I am not using in this video, at least I'm not using the new Photoshop beta, which has the AI built into it, but in the next videos I will be. So for here, all I'm doing is I extended the background. The traditional way you do it is just cropping it bigger and then having it fill for content, content aware fill, which is just up on the top. It'll have a check mark that says content aware. And then what I'm doing here is I'm trying to select her, and I was trying to see if I could get some kind of like cool distortion, but I think I didn't understand really that the beta version was a completely different app. So if you're on Photoshop right now and you're like, why don't I have that cool new AI thing that everyone else has? Well, it's a whole other app essentially. It's not the CC version or Creative Cloud version. It is its own completely different app, which I did not know. So I was like, you know what? I'll fix this later. I'll figure it out. So here I'm just doing some adjustments in the color balance, which I always try to start with, and then selective color. What I really wanted was, if you guys know like old traditional paintings, how they have, even when the resin or the protective layer on top kind of breaks through and does like the funky things where it's oxidizing. I kind of wanted that feeling of like the oxidation of a painting getting a little bit yellowed, a little bit green, a little dirty, and like still warm. So I was just kind of trying to get that feeling, but at the same time, I really was loving these deep, deep blues. So I I honestly didn't even know where I wanted to go with this image for a while. So I was kind of changing the blending modes. If you put it on screen, a lot of the time it like adds a nice little pop. But I don't know. There's so many ways that you could take your image, and just playing around in adjustments honestly is what's gonna create that nice color gradient. So playing around, not taking it too seriously, and just remember you can create different versions of the same image and then upload them to a gallery and then look at them on your phone. That way you can see, after you've taken a break from your project, kind of get new, fresh eyes on it, and then have a better understanding of where you want that portrait really to go. But for this one particularly, I knew what I wanted, and just went headfirst into into editing it. So if you've seen any of my other editing videos, I do a lot of curves adjustments. So the curves adjustments, what they do is I'll go in and do every single color, basically color curve, and then like change up the how the highlights look, how the darks look, and that really does tone your whole image a lot, as you can see here. So you can change the blend mode. I'm just watching this and like, I think this is 4x speed, and it took me, I don't even know how long to do this, but yeah. So if you wanted to slow this video down and get some like really specific like how I did it, like the actual values for everything, then you can definitely do that and just mute me. But yeah, it's so cool to watch it back. Not me over here just staring at my own work going, wow, she did that. So we're sorry guys. Okay, so I did want to try getting some different like kind of effects around her, kind of like those old saint portraits where they have like this glow behind them. But I think what I ultimately wanted to do was create a halo. So I just searched up like a halo overlay. I didn't find any that I really loved. And then I found this one, which was absolutely perfect. So if you see this, you kind of get the vibe I was going for. All right, so I slowed this down so you guys can kind of understand what I'm doing and I can kind of explain. So I masked her, so it's a subject mask, and then I doubled it. So that layer is getting doubled so that the image is only going on the background. And then that second layer is gonna be our actual, what's being shown up like to us. But the bottom one, I wanted kind of a haze to it. So I blurred it out with Gaussian blur. And then it was too bright for me, so I went in, did a curves, and then I only applied it to that the layer underneath. So by doing that, I believe you hit Alt and then you click on it and then you select the layer on the bottom. So it was way too sharp because it is fake. So a lot of the time when you use like things that are not from the original image, cameras, as sharp as they can be, they don't take the sharpest images, especially something that would be behind your subject, depending on the aperture, would be blurrier. So I wanted to add a little bit of blur to that, and then I wanted to add also some darkness going up. So using a gradient, I kind of darkened the bottom portion of that halo so it can kind of have her pop a little bit more, so our eyes don't go so much towards the halo as much as, you know, us focusing on her. But again, that's kind of where my head was at. You can definitely do a full-on halo if you really wanted to. I just wanted it to kind of blend a little easier. And then yeah, so getting it to kind of look a little bit more realistic, adding some blur so it doesn't look like it's super ultra sharp, making sure that she was masked so it went behind her, doing that double and now kind of triple mask of the halo where it's just adding some softness to it. So there's that halo, and then duplicating that layer, the background layer. And then I wanted to add a little bit of a highlight to her shoulder because the way that the light was spilling, it didn't spill as much on her shoulder as I wanted it to. And I wanted her to, again, look really like dewy and like shiny and very godlike, or goddessy like. So I'm adding some highlights with the dodge and burn tool. and changing up the range from highlights to midtones, and then I'll erase it where it looks like way too much. So just kind of like taking it off. And then remember, anytime you're using layers, that black conceals and white reveals. So you're kind of just making sure it looks as natural as possible without going too overboard. And so now, because her skin is turning a little bit orangey with the burn and dodge tool, I'm going in and I'm selecting the color from her highlight in her cheek and applying it to the highlight in her shoulder so it looks way more natural. And then we're kind of like blending that out and feathering it so it doesn't look like a giant like circle. And then just kind of rearranging it to where it should be positioned properly. And again, we can like take as much time as we want here, but it's really just really taking the time to look at those details and finding the little inconsistencies where it would look really obvious that this was all photoshopped, which I'm sure everyone would know because of that giant halo that it is photoshopped. But we can lie. We can lie a little bit. We can create an illusion, right? Yeah, it's fine. So I'm adding a little bit of highlight to her hair just so it could pop a little bit more. And don't worry right now if it still looks a little too flat. At the end, we'll do something that kind of I like to do to finish off my images. So going in, and again, devil's in the details, so we're just going in, retweaking things, going back, seeing what we can do, but overall, you know, trying to get it all as perfect as possible. And so here, what we're doing is we're sharpening the whole image. So what that is HDR. So you go filter, HDR, and then it'll create it on a gray layer. So as you can see there, and then you just add that to with the blend mode of overlay on your duplicate background layer, and yeah, it makes everything super pop. I have a video that goes way more into detail. It's called overly detailed image tutorial or something like that, and it goes really into detail of what I'm doing here. But yeah, I wanted to see if maybe I can like darken things up, but I didn't really care for it. I didn't really like the way that it was looking, so I just ended up not even trying to get it to do it. But yeah, just playing around with the image, trying to get as much haze as I could, getting her as poppy as I could. I really wanted her to pop. So as you can tell too, all of these are all like separate layers because I'm a committophobe, so I didn't want it to be destructive in any way. So these are all individual layers. I was going to try to change her dress color, as you can see here, and like make it red to match her lip. But in the next video that's going to come out, you'll see me actually do it. And I did that in Lightroom because it was a lot easier. If you guys remember me talking about the AI editing panel for portraits now, they actually have one that just selects the clothes for you and it'll make it look super hyper realistic, versus this that you can kind of see like where there's a haze on her hand, but there's not a haze on the dress anymore because I've made it darker, and it didn't really make sense. I'm sure there's a way to do it in Photoshop, and I'm sure I could have figured it out and, you know, done it, but it wasn't worth it at this point where I was in the edit. And I mean, the white didn't look bad. It was reflecting back blue, and I kind of really liked it. So it would have been cool to have it red. Maybe at some point I'll bring it back into Lightroom and, you know, re-edit it, and that'll be fun. But for right now, white is good. And then I wanted to see if I can make some like cool light leaks like around the image with like some colors, and then see if maybe like the blending modes can like change it. Ultimately, that was like for naught, like didn't really need it. So just playing around, seeing what can really work there. Yeah. Where are we at here? Ah, yes. Where I try to blur the bottoms This took me so long to figure out because it kept trying to blur the whole thing. And even though I was only telling it to blur this like specific section, it kept trying to blur the whole halo, which is obviously not what I was trying to do, but just blending it more into like a hazy blurry effect closer to her shoulders versus the top of her head. So there you can see it kind of a little bit better. So again, every time I edit too, I make a snapshot. So take a screenshot, snapshot, whatever you want to call it, there in Photoshop, so I can go back to that section if I feel like ultimately it was not a good idea to keep that edit there. And here we're just adjusting sharpness, making her super ultra sharp. And I love Smart Sharpen for this because you can like tell it how highlighty you want the highlights, how like deep you want the shadows, and then it like does it so good. It does it so perfectly, and without it going like overboard. And playing with this has been the coolest thing. I love using Smart Sharpen versus the just regular sharpen tool, or like a preset or a sharpening action. Like this for me has made a world of a difference, especially for images like this where they are very much not realistic. So I wanted her to look almost plastic and cartoony, and that gives that illusion. So I mean, look at, like, she's like sharp. I did want to remove it off her clothes though, because the dress is high texture and I didn't want our eyes to go straight to the dress. So I'm adding, I kind of wanted to see if I could remove some stuff, but I noticed that it made it look way too soft compared to everything else. And then just kind of removing a little bit of distractions here and there. And then we're gonna flatten the image, and this is where we're at right now. So remember how I said, like, don't worry if it still looks a little flat. A lot of the time what I end up doing is I edit with the brightness all the way up, and yeah, it's not the greatest idea because it's not going to be consistent through all the devices. So let's say you're looking at it on your phone, you're looking at it at your desktop, someone else is looking at it on their desktop, and you know, you get what I mean. It's just going to be so inconsistent. So yeah, usually I go back, and after I think I'm done with something, I'll like kind of walk away and come back and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, like I said before, and tweak some stuff. Like here, the color, I didn't know if I really liked it, if I wanted to keep that warmth, or if I wanted to go more gold. It was leaning really green, and then so here, that's what I'm talking about, where I'm making it pop even more. So I go into levels at the end of my edit, and I look at the levels, I look at where my whites are, and sometimes I'll just push my whites even more. And that way, when I'm looking at it on a different, like with a different render, wow, I can speak. Yes, I can. Different render on the device, then it'll make it pop. But yeah, that's our image. That's our before and after. And yeah, I hope you learned something new. I know this is more of a talking, like behind the scenes kind of video, but yeah. All right. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye!